A very warm welcome to Wesley Impact Highlights. Today we look back at one of our shows, a favourite from last year. For many, seeing the great need in impoverished countries around the world can be quite disempowering. For Kathy Pereira, she saw in those areas firsthand her role with Uniting World as making a difference, because it's all about connecting communities for life through partner church relationships. She shares how we can all be part of the solution and the joy that comes from offering others a helping hand. Good to see you, Kathy.
Hello, Keith.
Look, I know a little bit about Uniting World, but I suspect many don't. Tell us what Uniting World is.
Probably the best way to explain it is Wesley Mission has a passion for people on the margins and people in deep poverty here in Australia, and Uniting World has the same passion but for people in global communities, and particularly in our partner churches with the Uniting Church. There's about 36 of those around Asia, the Pacific and Africa. And so we're the international mission and relief and development agency of the Uniting Church. Yeah.
But try to, wherever possible, work with Christian churches.
Absolutely. We don't go on our own anywhere. We work with our partner churches overseas.
Okay. Is it something that you've always had a kind of thought that you'd like to do that, to work in the world rather than in Australia?
Yes, there's a little bit of a story to that, if I can tell you. When I grew up in the Methodist Church, and in the 1960s probably, the Methodist Church in Australia had an organisation for children called the Friends Club, which was an international mission awareness raising, I suppose, and my family were quite involved with that. And in fact, the first spark for a sense of wanting to be working in this area actually happened at the Lyceum Theatre. When I went along as a young child to a service that was done by some Pacific Islanders who were in Australia as a result of the Friends Club, and saw in that formative time when I was trying to work out and understand my faith as a little child, saw faith expressed in dance and song and carver ceremonies and things that were completely different to what we have here, and recognised that even as a young child that there was something about God that was a lot bigger than what I saw just at home. And that spark continued for quite a long time, and my husband is a Uniting Church minister, and as he was prayerfully considering whether to candidate for the ministry, I was pushing towards international mission, and he was feeling more and more led to ministry here in Australia. And as I was praying about that, at one point of time I picked up the Bible and read Ezekiel 3 that said, this is as close to a quote as I can get, "You're not being sent to a people of strange speech and difficult language, you're being sent to your own people." And I felt that God was saying at that time, when we were in our 20s, no, this is not right, you need to stay here, but never let the spark go. And
I'm going to come back in a moment, because I know that you know what it is to travel and to be perhaps a favourite place of yours in a moment. But before we share other church stories, I'd like to welcome today our new performer for some of you, but Greg Atwell has just finished a tour supporting Paul Coleman Trio. As Kathy shared, when God is the foundation of our hope, so something real happens in our lives. Here's Greg with Be Thou My Vision.
Now be your wills to me, say that thou art, thou my best Lord, by day or by night, waking or sleeping, thy presence my life. And
wesleymission.org.au provides a comprehensive look at the work of Wesley Mission. On our website, you'll find information about the wide range of services we provide for you and for your community. You can find all our contact details, published articles, our press releases, and our community research reports. There's more information about Keith Garner and our Christian faith. Visit wesleymission.org.au for more information about all the work of Wesley Mission.
And if you'd like to know more about Greg Atwell's music, then please visit our website this week. Now, Kathy, you travel to many parts of the world, but I do believe that there is a special place that you have in mind in Harare, a children's home there. Tell us a bit about that.
Sure. The Methodist Church in Zimbabwe is our partner in Zimbabwe, and there's an organisation called Matthew Riziki Children's Home. It works for supporting the children who are at the very bottom end of the pile in Zimbabwe, mainly children who are orphans, whose parents have passed away, often with HIV/AIDS related illness, and child-led households. And so the children are either come into the community at Matthew Riziki or else are supported in their own village clan communities through support to be able to go to school, perhaps support for foster parents to be able to look after them, things like that. It's amazing.
So tell me, that's the situation. What are we doing? What's the link with Australia? What is actually being done to help?
Sure. Uniting World, the Uniting Church through Uniting World has a relief and development project there, which is bringing life skills to parents, and community garden and piggery and chicken project. But also in the experience program, we have a family from Tasmania, the Maynards, who are heading over for 12 months to work in that community, live in the children's home and work in the community there.
That's very, very special. What's involved in the volunteer experience placement? I know that you talk about that. Tell us a bit about that, because people think of just individuals getting involved, don't they?
Yes, yes. Very much it's a church-supported project. So if I go and work in a community, then hopefully the entire church around me will support me and become part of that, because it's not just about us going and serving somewhere, it's about us learning from people and bringing back what we've learned to our own churches so that the church here in Australia gets changed as well. So we talk about word, deed and witness. So it's about sharing the gospel, using our skills where we can, whatever they might be and however simple they might be in some cases, but also the way we live out our faith in action in those communities is what speaks volumes.
And I like the concept of an extension not just being that people are going and raising money, but actually learning something from.
Absolutely, absolutely. The thing that strikes me everywhere I visit is that people in desperate poverty have amazing ways of being able to live that we wouldn't even begin to understand. And it's a wonderful opportunity for us to see the capacity of people in very complex situations. Yes.
So, Kathy, somebody stops to talk to you and says, I'd like to really volunteer or go and serve God in Uniting World. I'm not really a surgeon at St Vincent's Hospital. I'm not trained in Melbourne University. What can whoever I is do?
Look, our partner churches ask for people of all different sorts, and that includes people who may not seem to have any particular skills. I had one lady who was in her early 70s. Her husband was a teacher, and she said, but I want to go and do something. I've only been a housewife. And I said to her, don't worry. And we set her up. She went in as a teacher's assistant in a school in a Pacific country. And she was just going in to listen to children read, to encourage them to keep working. And she came back and said, she was there for 3 months, and she came back and said, Kathy, I didn't know I could do it, but I've learned so much and I've gained so much, and I feel like the little bit I gave was so little, but it's been a wonderful opportunity. So you don't have to have enormous skills.
One of the churches you were involved in has become involved in some of these projects, haven't they?
Yes, yes.
And Glenbrook has been one of those.
Yeah, Glenbrook Uniting. Two men from Glenbrook Uniting, Peter Berry and Ian Collins, went on an exposure visit to North India, to the Amritsar diocese, which straddles from Pakistan to Kashmir, right across the top. And they were so blown away by what they saw. They came back and bubbled it out at their church. And the church itself has got right behind it, and now the church has formed what we call an Australian church partner through Uniting World with the Amritsar Diocese, and they're supporting the work of Kangaroo Girls Hostel, which is a hostel for Dalit girls. So Dalits are the untouchables. Sure. And the Christian Church in North India is doing a lot of work with the Dalit group. And so the Glenbrook Church are supporting this hostel so that girls who wouldn't have a chance for education or hope for the future actually have opportunity. And the interesting thing for Glenbrook is it's caught the vision around the community. So other organisations in the community have started to get involved. So it's given them an entry point, if you like, into other other groups to share with in their own community. It's been wonderful.
Well, thank you for sharing some of those stories. And one of the things that I just want to think of as we close is really the fact that when you go to a place and you see a place, you never come back untouched.
Oh, no.
or without some element of change within yourself.
Yes.
Has this been true for you?
Absolutely, absolutely. And I am very grateful to my family for giving me what I think is a bit of a cup half full resiliency, I suppose. But yes, there are times where you see villages where 50% of the women die during pregnancy and childbirth because they simply don't have access to good health services and things like that. And you wonder, the questions come. But one of the things that strikes me everywhere I go is that there is always hope. That even in the midst of what seems like despair, there's a spark of God that can be held onto. And it's real, it's not a pie in the sky hope, it's something that actually keeps people going even in the most terrible circumstances and sees Christ in the people. Yeah.
I'd love to talk longer,
Yeah.
but the great thing is that there's a passion for you, and that really is important. Thanks, Kathy. We'll be back in just a moment.
Visit wesleymission.org.au/impact for more on today's program. There you'll also find selected video clips to download and forward to a friend, information about past episodes and guests, and you'll also have unlimited access to the articles in Wesley Impact magazine. You can also find out more about Keith Garner and the wider work of Wesley Mission. Visit wesleymission.org.au/impact for more on today's program and for all the content available online.
Wesley Mission also embraces the need to nurture communities right here at home. The Noreen Towers community provides transitional accommodation for up to 14 families who are homeless, or perhaps more often than that, at risk of becoming homeless. Let's take a look at how we assist to help people get back on track.
Before we didn't arrive in Australia, I was married in a violent situation, and I had to do something about it. I had to leave New Zealand and move over here to Australia. While we were moving over here, we had no family to come to. I was homeless for about 5 months with 5 children. The amount of money that I was getting, it was not enough to survive on. How you and Dad always... You just don't want anything to happen to your children. They're the most important thing in my life and my children. One day my son went to the lady's house and she rang us up, talked to us about if we needed any help, and I said yes. I said I really need help. And she said that there was a place called Noreen Towers, a place for us to move in. We came to look at the place, then she just told us that if we're ready to move in, then, we're moving in straight away.
No, just look for a job.
We were very happy. Very happy. Very happy.
You want to show them?
Noreen Towers is a supported accommodation service. We have the capacity to take up to 14 homeless families. We supply them with fully furnished 3-bedroom units. They get a case manager to work through their issues that have brought them to their homelessness.
Hello, Alison.
We have all sorts of activities, playgroups, parent groups, etc., as well to support them throughout their time here. We're a 9-month program, and our aim is to get them back out into private accommodation or public housing.
Moving here has been the best. It's been the best months that we've been living here, and it feels like home. The only thing I could give them is that just the name of my baby that I have named. Delisha is the name that we named her after the 4 ladies of the office of Donna, Alison, Natasha and Leslie. The second name is Noreen, that we named it after. As the middle name is the name of the building that we are living in at the moment.
Welcome back, and picking up the themes of the Noreen Towers community, the stories that Kathy's been telling us, is the fact that God is the refuge of the poor. And that's my theme from Psalm 14. I love the Psalms because I think they speak very readily and clearly into people's lives. One of the strongest texts in the Bible has to be Psalm 14 in the first verse. The fool has said in his or her heart, there is no God. It begins with such a strength. But it goes on, interestingly, to talk about how that denial of God in our lives ultimately can lead to injustice. The psalmist challenges what he calls evildoers, people whose lives are set against God. And we read these words: you evildoers frustrate the plans of the poor, but the Lord is their refuge. God has a very special place for the poor. Now, I want to tell you about a man who I met on a number of occasions, but once spent 3 or 4 hours with and listened to. He's a former England cricketer. Now, I tell you that because this was the days when England were winning test matches and were doing well. His name was David Shepherd. Eventually, David Shepherd, who was playing in the England test team, became a minister of faith. Eventually became a bishop. He became the Bishop of Woolwich and then the Bishop of Liverpool. He only died a short number of years ago. And he wrote a book called Bias to the Poor. And it was considered at the time to be quite controversial because people don't like anybody to have a bias towards one group or another. We say we don't like to think there's a bias. We expect our sports commentators to be at least objective, not to favour one team rather than the other, to not have bias in our community. We like our politicians to listen to everybody. But David Shepherd contended that right through the Bible, God has a bias toward the poor. And when I see it in the ministry of Jesus, I have to say, I think that's true. Time and time again, he went out of his way to reach people on the margins, on the edge, who felt disenfranchised from society. And he offered them friendship. Now, you see it obviously in stories of lepers, of blind people on the edge of the city. You see it in so many different stories of Jesus. But you see it in Jesus himself, in what he said, in what he did, and ultimately in his death on the cross, where to some extent he identifies with the cruelty of this world. But this particular psalm, Psalm 14, comes to a conclusion with something marvelous about God's salvation. But it also has this thought that God is a restorer of the fortunes of people. When the Lord restores the fortunes of his people. Now that to me is a word of great encouragement when I think of those who have little in this world. Those who have little in this world have little to be concerned about having taken from them. They have little that gives them confidence of themselves, and their confidence can truly be in God. And all of us that perhaps wrap ourselves around with those things that give us significance and worth and importance need to really take this truth that's here in the Psalms, that God has a very special place, and he is the refuge of those who are poor, those who find themselves in that place. His love, his grace is sufficient for all of us. So if it's true that the first word in this psalm, there is no God, that's what the fool says in the heart, leads ultimately to injustice. To affirm God and to believe in God, and the God we meet in the person of Jesus, results in the exact opposite of that. A real compassion, a real understanding. And whether it's in an African children's home in Zimbabwe, whether it is something that happens in a place on the edge of Sydney, or whether it's something that happens in outback Australia, where in fact people find themselves helping others and meeting people at their point of need, in all those cases, the response to the God of grace and love is a positive one that's spelt out in the specific circumstances of people's needs. You see, God always has a special place for people who are without, for people who are lost, for people who are hurt. God is a God of grace, and grace is all about the unmerited, the unearned, the undeserved, and God who meets us at that place. So I don't know what your situation is. I can't possibly know that, but I can know this, that if you find yourself at wit's end corner in a tough place today, you can be certain that God at least has a heart for you, even if it feels like the rest of the world doesn't. God does have a heart for you, and we're always pleased to have contact with people and to provide help where we can to people in those circumstances. Don't be afraid to write to us, to make contact with Wesley Mission so that we can offer to you the friendship of Jesus Christ. Listen to these details and make contact with us.
If you would like to know more about today's topic, or for more on Keith's message, contact Keith by writing to Wesley Mission, Post Office Box A5555, Sydney South 1235, or email impacttv@wesleymission.org.au.
I hope you really enjoyed one of our shows. That was a part of a series on care and compassion. It's been great to see how people have stepped out of what we might call their comfort zones to offer help to others, both in our own backyard as well as abroad. Jesus is the supreme teacher, and we know that love changes everything. Here's Sancha Prowse with Testified to Love. Till next week, goodbye and God bless you.
All the colours of the rainbow, all the voices of the wind, every dream that reaches out to find where love begins. Every corner of creation lives to testify. For as long as I shall live, I will testify to love. I'll be a witness in the silences. The words are not enough. With every breath I take, I will give thanks to God above. For as long as I shall live, I will testify to love. From the mountains to the valleys, from the rivers to the